see head coach Gary Smith coach a phenomenal win today. That's why.
Yeah, much changed Chicago group, but sometimes that can cause some strange mental sort of lapses for a group when they see so many changes. Think that the job might be a tad easier, and they couldn't have been further from the truth about that against this Chicago group. But I thought we started well, dominated proceedings for a good while, and my only concern was that we only scored one in that first period when there might well have been 2 or 3 other opportunities to extend our lead. The second half, I thought we started fairly slowly, and I thought they had their best spell for about 15 minutes in that first period of the second half. But slowly but surely we got ourselves back into a groove, and in the end it's been a very good victory.
Thank you, Coach. We are going to open the floor for questions. Steven, take us on.
Hi, Coach. First, really kind of humid night in this going to the summer season. How did that affect the team, especially when you guys hit some of those slow patches in the first half and some not slow in the second half? Did the heat or the humidity have anything to do with that?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly thought where the stadium blocks out most of the initial sunlight, the temperatures in the shade were quite considerably lower than any direct sunlight. But you're right, it was the first warm day in a good while, and I'm sure the guys, felt that. And I've got to be honest, I thought the pace of the game was still very, very high. We put an awful lot into it to try and take the game and pressurise Chicago and unsettle them. And I thought we did it very, very well. But I think you see some of the changes that were made to try and just give the group a little bit of a lift in terms of energy and to see the game out. In terms of Lucas and Teal, whilst both of those guys were absolutely terrific, they're both carrying or coming back from difficulties, and I just didn't want to take any more chances with them, which is why they were off. But the rest of it was really just to try and lift the group with some more energy and to see the game out.
Gary, what comes into play as a coach when you see a guy like Jacob and the other team can't just do anything about it?
Well, the first period, I thought that left-hand side for us was a really productive area. And I know I've said this a couple of times, but when you got guys that are so electric quick, if you're not and you're playing against them, there's a fear factor. There's a concern. You've got to give yourself a bit more space. You've got to deny any opportunity to run in beyond, because you're never going to catch him. And I thought we had some very, very good moments down that left-hand side, and maybe there were a couple more to be had. But it really wasn't until we saw what was a fantastic individual run from almost the halfway line again that we've seen before, and he earned the second penalty, that he really got his just desserts for some of the efforts and the energies that he put into the game. I thought he was absolutely fantastic, and I'm sure you understand that when he came off, he was absolutely, winded and physically had put everything into the game.
Yeah, Coach, obviously Hany had a really good game tonight, scoring 3 goals, but Walker Zimmerman didn't play tonight, and Lucas stepped up, played really well. What was his impact like for the team, and just how well he did play on that backside?
I thought it was absolutely fantastic, Lucas. He came into us, as you well know, in a trade just before the window closed. He actually came to us with a little bit of a problem that he'd picked up on that Saturday prior to the trade, and we knew that. So we've been nursing him through a little bit of a difficulty, and what he has been able to do with not a lot of training time is fill some very, very big shoes in Walker, and extremely well. I thought he was aggressive. He was a presence back there, and when needed, I thought he was very calm on the ball. And if you looked at how he played and how he fitted in, you'd have thought he'd have been here for 2 or 3 seasons, which is always a good sign. Delighted with, one, the character that he's shown to stand up and step up for the group in a difficult time when it would have been easy for him to say, look, I need a bit more time to get myself together here. But immense. And only overshadowed, I think, by Hany's hat-trick. Second time that he scored a hat-trick against Chicago. I think I was heard on the way in that he scored 3 hat-tricks, 2 against Chicago, which is a little bit strange. But you find that sometimes players have there's something that they enjoy about certain teams, and this one's obviously for Hany.
Gary, what does it say about you guys, or how encouraging is it that you're able to see off a game like this with a scoreline that's probably pretty fair with how it went, and get those 2 goals there at the end to kind of
Yeah.
put it away?
Yeah, at 1-0, I think we all know there's always that concern that the other team, in trying to push for a goal, find a little bit of fortune or a little bit of quality. And there's no doubt, as they started to bring players into the game, they were adding bodies that we've probably seen more regularly in their starting lineup. So there was a worry that if we didn't get that second goal, that there might be some edgy moments as the game started to wind down. But I've got to say the attitude of the players, the willingness to find not only that second goal, but obviously the third and the threat beyond remained throughout the game. And I've seen on many occasions now that if we can get ourselves in front and teams are committing more players to the attack and trying to press a little bit higher, we're at our best, or can release some players with real athleticism and pace, and the likes of Fafa and Hany and even Ethan at the end there were in very, very good spots and willing to make the very best of those moments.
So, Coach, in the second half, you kind of saw Shaqiri kind of do some overlapping runs with the forwards with Chicago, and taking off Lucas after the 63rd minute, having the pairing with Jack and Daniel Levitz in the back. Did Jackson be more comfortable from the looks of it, from your perspective, or was it just kind of just had to keep playing and get his feet under him? Because in the LAFC game, it was more discombobulation.
Yeah.
And now it was feel like he had more
Yeah, I think they were very different games. There were some, I think there were some instances in the LA game that there was a combination of events that I think presented a very different challenge for the group. But I still thought that Chicago, in trying to press and impress upon us some of those, very talented players that they brought on, found a couple of little pockets and opportunities, and probably their best sights a goal in that window between the sort of hour mark to 70-75 minutes, and moving then into a back 5 to just give us a little bit more stability. What was, I felt, the right move, and in the end turned out to be obviously a move that enabled us to see the game out. But look, with Walker out, and he picked up some soreness that he walked out of training on Friday, and I was hoping that he'd be fine. It seems like the scans not revealed an awful lot, but we'll find out a bit more on Monday. But it's a big loss, and knowing that I probably had to take Lucas out at some point, Daniel does a sterling job in there. I think it was just the sequence of events against LA that probably presented something that was a little bit tougher to deal with.
We are going to transition to the Zoom for the 2 final questions. Team Ben, please ask one each.
Hey Gary, I think traditionally you guys have a reputation, whether or not you consider that fair, that when you take a lead, it's kind of sitting back and making sure you protect that lead. But tonight you guys ended up with 4.5 expected goals. I know you already know that. I know you looked at the stats, but you guys really poured on the pressure. Even aside from the 2 that resulted in the goals, that you're both kind of a bit more counterattack. But was that an active choice that you made? Was that just what the game presented itself to you guys? How did that kind of come about, where you were saying, okay, we're going to keep going and pouring on pressure here?
Well, no, I think you can. I think you can look at the changes that were made and see that there was energy injected into the group. You know, the two central midfield guys in Dax and Anabar were terrific, but they put an awful lot into the game. You know, you have to remember that in the early exchanges of both halves of the game, I'm asking them to do a hell of a lot more than they've probably done in those midfield areas, in shutting down and chasing out wide. And I couldn't ask for any more from them. So when you've got two experienced guys and two very talented guys on the line like Sean and Jan, and of course Brian Anunga, who didn't see the field today, it makes absolute sense to bring them in and to give everyone else a lift in one of the most competitive areas of the field. So we certainly wanted to push on and get that second goal. Fafa's inclusion at 2-0 could have easily been a defensive player. The fact that Alex goes to wing back, I could have brought on a centre back and played Shaq at right wing back, but giving or putting Alex into that world, I know that he's going to give us a little bit more probably going forward and pressing into that midfield. The combination of I think the players' attitude, the confidence in the group, players that are out there that are really feeling the moment, I think drove us on and a bit of extra energy to what was a very good win in the end and a comfortable win. But it certainly wasn't that way if you were here. I was actually happier with, the early exchange and certainly the first half where I thought there were some moments we should have made far more of and gone in feeling a lot more comfortable than we did at 1-0. So, without getting too down about that, having won well, I think one of the criticisms of the group is at that point where you're on top, you've got to make the very most of it.
Ben?
Yeah, Gary, Hany now leads, he's tied for the MLS lead in combined goals and assists. Everybody knows what he did last year. He led the league in combined goals and assists in 2021. Just what does it mean to a club when you're starting out in your first couple seasons to have a guy like him who's legitimately like a superstar in the league and performing with the top players in the league? What does it mean for this team?
Well, yeah, I would agree totally. He's been absolutely fantastic for this team and this franchise. There's no doubt about it. But I would also add to that, he's a fabulous person and he's a very, very hard-working lad. This is not just a result of somebody turning up at the weekend and using their talent to the best degree. He works very hard in the week. He's constantly trying to, refine whether it's set pieces or individual work and choices he's making. And I think you can see the benefits and results of that. I would also have to add that I think the support around him has been absolutely fantastic. But there is no doubt you need a jewel in any crown, and he is certainly that. And he's been wonderful for us. And today, I think typifies again, and if I'm not mistaken, after a couple of weekends of saying he sometimes takes a little while to get into gear, I'm hoping that this weekend might be that weekend where he goes into third or fourth gear and he keeps that going and pulls away.